There have been quite a few major injuries, goalies that were sent down to the AHL with their third string goalie coming up and being an absolute stud, and players that just have been performing exceptionally well over the last 2 months. And hopefully I can capture all of them in this video, where I'm going to break down 7 players that I think are currently skyrocketing up the fantasy rankings. My name's Mike, and let's jump into the video. I'm going to start this video off with the player that I am most excited to talk about, Andrei Svechnikov of the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, it's been a whirlwind for him this season and for us here at FantasyPuck, as he seemed to be in every single preseason video that I made because I was so excited about what we were going to see from a guy who was being drafted around ADP 70 to 100 in some leagues. With Svechnikov, he didn't start the season healthy, and when he was healthy, he wasn't very productive. But since December, he's been an extremely good player, and this has been the player that we've hoped for when we drafted him. Now, hopefully you held on to him or you bought low on him when his value just 2 months ago was at an extremely low rate. And for right now with Svechnikov, he's been an absolute stud. In December, 12 games played, 8 goals, 17 points, 11 of those points on the power play, 33 shots on goal, 27 hits, and playing over 17 minutes per night. With Svechnikov, he's back skating on the top line, power play 1. And right now, his point production is a little bit inflated due to those power play points. 11 power play points in 12 games. I don't think anyone other than Connor McDavid could sustain that rate. But with Svechnikov here, the one thing that I want to note is that shot and hit volume is exactly what we want to see from him. He has been a notorious player that's had 10 plus shots per 60, 6 plus hits per 60. And those are numbers you want to see from players, especially in those points leagues that do count hits. Now, over that time, since December, he's been a top 5 skater. And I would say for the rest of the season, I don't think he can sustain top 10 fantasy relevance, but he could be easily a top 30 to 40 player if you bought low on him or if you held on to Svechnikov. This is a perfect time because we're now entering into the last 10 weeks before fantasy playoffs. And there's about 3 months left of fantasy. And if Svechnikov could continue or be a little bit less than what we've seen in his current rate right now, he has the upside to really bolster your team, put you into a good playoff position, ultimately win your fantasy championship. Now, the very high power play point production, as I mentioned, can be cautioned a little bit. I don't think it's sustainable, but he still remains as an elite shot volume player with an elite hit rate and the upside to score each and every game. I love Svechnikov right now. For the rest of the season, he should be an absolute beast. Sticking with the Carolina Hurricanes theme, we have Pyotr Kochetkov of the Carolina Hurricanes. He's been an extremely good goalie this season, given the blunders that this Carolina Hurricanes team has had in net. Now, we know that Freddie Anderson is supposed to be out for quite a long time. Unfortunately, he did have blood clots, and right now there's no timetable for his return. I just tried to do some research to see, is he skating? Is he going to be back soon? But it doesn't seem like it. And Kochetkov has taken over that #1 role on the Carolina Hurricanes team that I think we can all agree is a top 5 team in the NHL. Ranta was waived previously. He seems to be back in the club and back as the backup goalie to Kochetkov. Now, we know the Carolina Hurricanes goaltending has been a little bit dicey this season. There's been a lot of games where either goalies were giving up 5 goals on 23 shots, and it makes it really difficult when they're playing on a team that just doesn't give up shots. But for Kochetkov, he seems to have found the net. He is now the #1 goalie, and in December, 11 starts, a 6-3-2 record, a .915 save percentage, and a .236 goals against average. And he has continued that pace in January through the first 2 starts. He's 2-0 with a .935 and a .150 goals against average. Very elite numbers from a goaltender that I think personally has the upside to be a top 10 goalie for the rest of the season. Now, the Carolina Hurricanes team, you always want to be taking goalies that have a very strong team in front of them, and that's the case here with Carolina. They have the highest Corsi for percentage at 59.85% and the 3rd highest expected goals for percentage at 55.88%. I think he has top 10 upside for the rest of the season. If you've added him and you're in a keeper league, I think he could have top 7 upside for any goalie in a keeper league, given how strong this Carolina Hurricanes team should be, not only this year, not only next year, but for the next 5 seasons. They are going to be extremely competitive. They're full of very, very strong contracts. I like the team overall. So hopefully you own them right now in fantasy. If not, this is definitely a good time to be adding him. At the time of recording, just 36% of you are subscribed to the channel, so if you've enjoyed the content so far, make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with all the content that we're going to be pumping out for the rest of the season. In addition, we have updated our projections for the rest of the season. If you're interested in gaining access to that, head on over to our Patreon. The link will be in the description. If you have any questions, make sure you leave a comment on this video or simply message me on Discord. Let's jump back into the video, guys. I know I tend to talk about Owen Tippett a little bit too much, but Mr. Consistent continues to be popping up in the fantasy rankings, and he continues to be going on an upward trajectory, and that's what you want to see from your players. He's officially moved up to line 1, power play 1. Thank you, Torts, for putting your 30 goal scorer on the top power play unit. I don't know why this didn't happen before, and this Philadelphia Flyers power play just isn't good at all. But it seems like even with the increased role, he's still playing around 15 to 17 minutes. And I do think that's what's restricting him from being a 30 to 40 goal scorer, because he has one of the best shot rates in the entire NHL. He is one of 2 players with 12 plus shots per 60 and 6 plus hits per 60. The other player, Brady Tkachuk, a guy that we know that's going first round or second round each and every season. And he is a very, very strong fantasy player. But Owen Tippett is right behind him in terms of all the per 60 rates. He just lacks the power play point production given how bad the Philly power play is, and he just doesn't play enough minutes. But right now for Tippett, he has the 3rd best shot rate in the NHL at 13.3 shots per 60 and the 2nd best Corsi 4 rate in the NHL at 26.09. He's currently on pace for 27 goals, 47 points, 285 shots, 130 hits, and 41 blocks. Each and every game, it seems like Tippett's getting 5 shots and 3 hits. Even when he's not scoring, he's still being productive. One of the highest floor forwards in the entire league. In most leagues, he should be a top 100 player at this point, with the upside to finish as a top 50 player in fantasy. Jumping back over now to a goaltender that has been extremely good. Leafs fans, I don't know if he's the solution, and you may think he is. I'm not sure yet. But with Joseph Woll now injured, and I just read that Sheldon Keefe said he's still a ways away, and with Ilya Samsonov getting waived, Martin Jones has stepped in to be the #1 goalie. This was a guy who was signed to an AHL contract and was a backup plan. He's plan C. He was the 3rd string goalie, and now he's starting for the Leafs, and his roster percentage has skyrocketed since he's been recalled. I don't really like talking about goalies too much just because of how volatile they've been this season, and it's very likely that after this video has been posted, he gives up 5 goals on 15 shots. But still, with Jones, since he's been recalled, he's been an absolute beast. 10 games started, 8-3 record, a .934 save percentage, and a .198 goals against average with 2 shutouts on a Leafs team that has been scoring a lot of goals recently. And that's what you want from your goaltender, a goalie that can just get you wins each and every night while allowing less than 3 goals. With Samsonov recently recalled, I don't think there's any panic. The Leafs playing a back-to-back this weekend, and it's likely that Samsonov just gets one of the 2 starts. Hildeby gets sent down for now, and then Hildeby likely gets called back up, and Samsonov has his conditioning stint in the minors. I'm not Brad Treliving, so I don't know they're playing with him right now, but I would say there's no panic if you own Martin Jones. His roster percentage has skyrocketed. He's been a top 5 goalie over the last month. I would say for the rest of the season, because we don't have a timeline on Woll right now, Jones could be easily a top 10 to 12 goalie given the strength of the Toronto Maple Leafs moving forward and the fact that he should be getting the bulk of the starts for this team. I like Jones. Hopefully you added him from free agency. I know Chris was recommending him quite a bit, especially in the Discord. Definitely a guy that's been a very, very strong asset to your fantasy team. I wanted Rakell to be good so bad this season, and maybe this is finally the time. Since Rust went down with injury, Rakell has been moved back up to the line 1 power play 1 role, but prior to that, Rakell was playing, he was moved down to the second line, playing power play 2, and was not productive like we saw last season. He was arguably a league winner last year. He had such a strong year. He was producing offensively, he had shots, he had assists, but now we've seen back in that more elevated role in the line 1 power play 1, and the production is finally here for Rickard Rakell. Over the last 10 games, 5 goals, 10 points, 3 of those points in the power play, 27 shots, 8 hits, and skating over 19 minutes per night. In this same role last season, like I said, extremely productive. 28 goals, 60 points, 21 points on the power play, 243 shots, and 141 hits. He arguably finished as a top 75 to 50 player in most leagues last season, and a lot of people were excited about drafting him. But after a slow start, he's regained his confidence. A rust injury kind of bumped him back up in the lineup, and now with Rust back in the lineup, the Penguins haven't moved him back down. So Rickard Rakell is still skating on that top line, on the top power play unit, and his roster percentage has not reflected that production at all. He has the upside this season to finish as a top 75 to 100 skater. It's really contingent on what the Penguins do with him. Now, does Rust get moved back up to the top line, the top power play unit? If he does, the Rickard Rakell bet's over, it's off. But if not, Rickard Rakell for the rest of the season, we should see that roster percentage start to skyrocket up to 60, 70, 80% like we saw last year with this extremely productive season. I like what we're seeing from Rakell right now. His value recently has been skyrocketing given the increased role and the production. Brock Faber is someone I'm extremely excited to talk about. He was a guy I mentioned to the FP guys in the preseason saying, we got to keep an eye on Brock Faber and see what the outcome is. He played with Logan Cooley over in Minnesota. I listened to an interview saying that Faber is a very strong defensive style defenseman, but needs to work on his offense. And it seems like Minnesota has been giving him all the offensive reps now that Jared Spurgeon is back on IR. He can't stay healthy, and Faber has reclaimed that pair 1 power play 1 role. Now, over the last 15 games for Faber, 1 goal, 9 points, 3 points on the power play, 31 shots, 31 blocks, and the minutes have been insane. 27 minutes a night right now in a very high leverage role. But the crazy thing is, in 5 of his last 12 games, he has skated over 30 minutes. We don't see this very often in the NHL. It's like Thomas Chabot 2 years ago. Some nights we see this with Erik Karlsson. But for Brock Faber, the Minnesota Wild have pushed all their chips in for him right now, and they have him as their #1 defenseman. He has been doing everything. It's criminal to see this guy under 50% rostered. I've made sure to add him in all the leagues that I could. He has really the potential to be a top 10 to 12 defenseman for the rest of the season. A very high shot volume, a very high block volume, but now skating on the top power play unit, you can't really get this very often in free agency. Now, the big thing I want to note is that Kirill Kaprizov is injured right now, and that does hurt the production of Minnesota's offense and ultimately hurts the production of Faber's offense. So hopefully, moving forward, when we start to see Kirill Kaprizov healthy, if Spurgeon remains on the IR, Faber could have a massive impact on your fantasy team long term. I think he's an ad across all leagues right now. Definitely a guy you want to be trying to roster. Finally, Dawson Mercer, a guy who has really stepped into a much more elevated role recently, and a guy that struggled quite a bit out the gate. It seems like he's slowly regaining his confidence. We knew going into the season that the Devils had a lot of mouths to feed offensively, and we weren't sure that, Dawson Mercer, who has scored 27 goals last season, if he would be playing that top 6 role or on the top power play unit. And that's not what we saw. He struggled out the gate. He couldn't really find his game. But luckily, due to some injury, he has moved into a much more elevated role in the top 6 and now skating power play 1 with Hughes out. And it's crazy to see and laugh at. Through his first 8 games, he had 0 points and just 6 shots. He was averaging under 1 shot per game. And this was a guy who scored 56 points just the season prior, while averaging 60 minutes and 47 seconds time on ice. But since then, since he's regained his confidence, started to find the back of the net and get that monkey off the back, 30 games played, 12 goals, 20 points, 61 shots on goal, and averaging 18 minutes and 30 seconds. With the Hughes news that he's injured, Mercer now moves into a power play 1 role, and hopefully this starts to really get his game back and become the breakout player that a lot of people thought going into this season. He broke out last year with 27 goals, 56 points, and we could see a second half resurgence from Mercer. But for right now, it's fair to say that his current value has been skyrocketing given the increased deployment, increased minutes, and the production. I know he was a very strong streaming option last season, or last week, and hopefully if you added him last week, you got a steal of a player that you could be holding on to the long term. I like the outlook from Dawson Mercer here. Let me know if you added him last week and what you're going to do with him. This has been a very strong player for the last season, and hopefully he can continue to be that for the second half of this season. That will do it for the player skyrocketing video. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.